Hi Nitin, just give me a minute and we can start in another minute or so. I'll make the announcement. We are currently live streaming on YouTube. Dear participants, we welcome all of you for this exciting webinar. Thank you for taking your time out. Few important guidelines before we start the session. During this webinar, all participants will be muted. In case you have any questions, you can type the same in the Q&A section, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We will try and attempt to answer most of them. I would also request you to please use a headset or headphone for best audio quality. Thank you. We are starting with the session now. Over to you, Nitin.
Good evening, everyone.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar. My name is Nitin Shanbag. I head investment products for Motilal Oswal Wealth Management. We have today a very exciting session ahead of us on the learnings from the book Disrupt and Conquer, which captures the journey of how TTK Prestige became a billion-dollar company. TTK Prestige, as you all know, is India's largest kitchen appliances company and is quite synonymous with pressure cookers. This book, Disrupt and Conquer, I believe is a must-read for any aspiring entrepreneur or business leader. This book has been authored by our guest for today, Sandhya Mendonca. A warm welcome to you, Sandhya. Let me give everyone a quick introduction before we begin. Sandhya is a journalist, author, editor, speaker, and cultural evangelist. She is the founder, managing director, and editor-in-chief of Raintree Media Private Limited, and is also the festival director of India's first multi-arts women's cultural festival, which is titled Under the Raintree. So once again, a very, very warm welcome to you, Sandhya. Before we get into specifics of your book, let's start with what really inspired you to work on this book.
First of all, thank you very much, Nitin. I'm very honored to be chosen to be part of today's program. And a thank you to all your high net worth audience who's part of this. Like you said, I used to be a journalist in the early part of my career. So I've always followed stories and interviewed people. And over a period of time, as I grew my company, Raintree Media, we started publishing books with a global partnership, where we used to showcase the best companies in different regions. So we've done books on best of Bangalore, best of Chennai, best of India, etc. Along the way, I was asked by Dr. Sudarshan Maini, the father of Chetan Maini, who started India's first EV, the Reva Electric, to write a book with him. He had been kind of my godfather, so to say. He would always come to my book launches, and he had always had it in the back of his mind that when he does write a book, he wants to do it with me. So he asked me to write a book with him. And so we ended up authoring a book on India's green gift to the world. After that, I was so busy doing so many things, including setting up this cultural festival. The other things had kind of receded. But I heard about T.T. Jagannathan's talk at the IAS Pierre Boy lecture. It's an annual lecture that's conducted by Bunty Pierre Boy and his ad agency, Ma, here. It's very famous. And I always look forward to hearing very interesting captains of industry who come and talk there. And Mr. Jagannathan's story was absolutely riveting. It was like a Jeffrey Archer story. He's a young man without any responsibilities, leading the good life, pursuing his academic career. And out of the blue, he's asked to come back and take over loss-making company. I mean, not just loss-making, severely in debt. And then he somehow manages to do it, clears all the debts, brings up the company as a successful thing, and bang, straight into one crisis, which almost takes the company down again. But he comes back again, and after that, there's no stopping him. And I felt that this is a story that I had to say. And I mean, it had to be said. Everybody said that, but I wanted to be the person to write it. So I didn't know him at all. Surprisingly, though he's been in Bangalore for so many years, I think all of us were busy chasing only IT stories, so we had forgotten all about the brick and mortar companies. And I asked Bunty Pure Boy to introduce me, and he said, look, I'll do the introduction. Whether he does it or not, I'm doubtful, because he's quite a shy person in terms of talking about himself. He'll talk about his business, but never about himself. I said, you leave it to me, Bunty. I can be pretty persuasive when I want to. So I got a meeting with him, and I think he liked the fact that I was ahead of time for my meeting. He must have been quite fed up with people telling him, oh, Bangalore's traffic, I was late and things like that. I was well ahead of time. Luckily, because my office was right next door. It took me 2 minutes to reach his office. And he said, yes, he was free at that point of time. And he said, I have a couple of weeks where I'm not traveling. So you come and talk to me. And that's how it started.
Super. So, let's start with the book. And I'd like to, for the benefit of our viewers, divide it into 4 different kind of areas. The first, as you touched upon, Mr. Jagannathan's accidental entry into his family business and his initial struggles. 2, we'll discuss about the need for innovations in any business, right? 3, handling both success and failures. And the TTK group has seen a lot of them over cycles. And 4th, the importance of marketing for business, another very critical area. So let's dwell a little bit more into that initial journey, right? And what are the important lessons for anyone who is looking to start a business or a venture?
Like I said, Mr. Jagannathan's own entry into business was accidental. But once he decided that he wanted to take up the business, that he didn't see a way out, he decided to go all in. So, which is what I feel that every business person should be clear. It's, if you're in the business, be completely devoted to it. That's what my takeaway from it was. You can't just dabble in it and always be saying, okay, I will also have already immediately, even before I get started, I will be looking at my exit plan, that I want to, just do this for a while and then go away. I don't think that was his way of thinking at that point of time. So I also felt that he realized that there are problems. There were problems when he took it up. And there were very huge problems. There were problems in many of the group companies, and they were all, it was such a tangle. Every time they wanted to do something, the family would go and set up a new joint venture. So for them to even disentangle it was going to take some time, but at the same time, they were all bleeding. So what do you do when there are so many problems? Look at the biggest problem, biggest pain for your company, which is the one that is taking away most of your money. So you tackle that first. Instead of chipping away at many of these problems that are there, pick one problem and focus on solving it. And then you can resolve all the others. That was a very important takeaway for any business, I felt. And another thing that I felt was that you have to be a continuous learner. You know, it was a conventional company, a traditional company, and before it became public, there were not many professionals who were interested in joining it. And attracting talent was very difficult. Professionals were not very keen to take up jobs in private companies. So one of the things he had to do was he had to keep learning, but that also was useful because he knew all the different aspects of the business, which I felt is a good thing even for any business. Even today, if you can attract the topmost B school talent, it's always good for you to know as an entrepreneur various aspects, so you're not taken by surprise, or you're at least able to understand where the company has to head next. I feel that those are very key takeaways. Not leave everything only to professionals. Yes, hand it over to them, but also be savvy enough to know that you need to know everything about your business.
Right, right. It'll be interesting, Sandhya, if you can actually take us through that phase where he was literally studying. He was out there in the US, and he had to come back because of his family problems. I mean, it's such a testing time for anyone who has to who has nothing to do with the business. All of a sudden, has to take up that mantle and set course for it. If you can dwell a little bit deeper, that'll be great insight.
Right. So he was a gold medalist in IIT Madras, and he was interested in being an academic. He wanted to complete his thesis, PhD, and become a professor or a scientist in the US. And he felt, he enjoyed the benefits of belonging to an established business family, but he didn't really want to be involved in it. And when his parents landed up and told him that, we really need you because we can't see a way out of this, he thought his older brother would take it up. But older brother was not well, and youngest brother was too young. And the family was not of the kind who would say, okay, fine, we'll just cut our losses and run from the country, like many others have done subsequently. They were determined that they will pay back all the people who they have borrowed from. And those days, businesses used to take money even from individuals, depositors. So they were very clear that none of them would be ever affected. Even though they were making losses, they continued to pay interest on the deposits. So when he came back, first of all, he had to learn what is a business. He had never visited any of the factories. And then he decided he would go and deal with the biggest problem, which is the maps and atlases. And the first thing he realized was his father had built a very huge infrastructure, because the German company with whom he had a JV had very mathematically calculated, with this huge Indian population, with every Indian needing a map, the printing of the maps would be phenomenal. But of course, Indians like to share. One map goes a long way. Maybe a dozen people used to share it, and nobody really bought that many, but they had this huge infrastructure. And what do you do with all those idle machines? So he decided, why don't I take up only the printing work for other people? So he went to all the ad agencies, the other factories, and started taking it up. And a little bit of luck also helped, because when he wanted to buy a new machine, his father had gone to the races and he won 4 lakhs, which he gave him. So he could use that money to buy a new machine. So it was like that. Very systematically, he decided he would do that. And then the next assignment that was given to him was to come to Bangalore and take up the TTK Prestige. At that time, it was not known as TTK Prestige. It was just known as TT. And come and take it up. And here there was another problem, because the workers themselves were very hostile. They thought that was the only company that was making money, and then he would come and take out all the money, and they would be left with nothing. He would go back to Chennai with all the money that this company was making, and they didn't even let him into the gates of the company. He had to get the police to let him in. But he was humble enough to realize that they were right. He may be a gold medalist, but he really didn't know anything about making a cooker. So he decided he won't even sit in the MD's office. He would sit in a little cabin outside where his secretary had to sit, and he started learning the business. He went into the factory floor, he learned everything, and slowly he started gaining their faith. At that time, even the raw material crisis was happening, because the government used to control the aluminium that was allocated. So he went and negotiated that, and he got enough money. So before long, the company kept churning out cookers, and the workers were very happy with him, because I think his nature is also that he's a very humble man. So he would have been one of the workers, he spoke their language, he worked with them, he actually enjoys being a hands-on person. So though I was not even born then, I can quite imagine him wearing blue overalls and working in the factory. I can quite imagine him wanting to do that. So after that, when things were looking a little hunky-dory, then of course came the news that the cookers were bursting. And that news was the one that he got to know. They had been happening for a while, but nobody had told him. He just wondered why the sales were not picking up, especially in the northern market. He decided to go to the market himself and check it out. And that's when he realized all the cookers that they had sent from here were lying unsold on the shelves. And then the dealers told him, oh, you know what, your cookers are bursting. And then he realized that it was happening because of spurious spare parts, the safety plugs. But whatever it is, Indians will buy whatever parts that they could get. So he didn't want to make that into, like a face-saving thing. He decided to come back and fix the problem. So he came back and invented the gasket release system. So though this genuine safety plugs need to be used, and they launched a campaign for it, they also created this kind of a double safety feature. So if the safety plug fails, at least the gasket release system will ensure that the cooker does not burst. So that was a major learning for them. And I think once that was in place, he also had the confidence of the market. He also felt confident that he was doing something on his own now. It was not just carrying forward the family business. And I think that created a very different kind of a mindset in the market and among the employees, which is very important for a business.
Absolutely. And you touched upon a couple of important aspects out there. I think one is the humility, right? That despite the fact that you run the business, for you to be one amongst the employees and be able to learn, despite you pretty much being able to have the chair, at your disposal. And of course, learning at every point of time, and also the idea of innovation. I mean, there were plenty of innovations that this company did. Apart from the fact that you mentioned that they did that gasket release system, which would have otherwise let that business get into bankruptcy. But apart from that, they set up redistribution at a very early stage. I think Mr. Jagannathan was quick to kind of pick that up. They also started manufacturing products in India. So this entire Make in India concept, which we've been hearing for the last 6 to 7 years, they started doing that way before, and of course product innovation as well. So from some of these other episodes, any insights that you took on innovation per se, and how important it is for business at every point of time?
I think innovation is in the DNA of this company. Like you said, it was the founder of the company, T.T. Krishnamachari, who created this redistribution system. Earlier, they were just distributing. They were one of the distributors, and then he realized he could increase the business if he appointed key distributors himself in the towns who could then service the local markets. And that's something that has been of such great help. And that's something that every manufacturer, every FMCG that has done business in India has followed. And they were the pioneers of that. And similarly, it was his father who realized that, during the Second World War, while they had this great distribution chain, they had no products to distribute because all the supplies had been stopped. Now, what are they going to do with all these? They had a great, the Indian market had a great appetite, but which they had created. TTK had created this appetite for products which were not there. So it decided to get into manufacturing here. That's how all the manufacturing started. So it is like necessity is the mother of invention in the same way. And I feel that is something that, that has been carried on at every stage. You don't just give up. You see, okay, if this is not working, let's try something else. And then that is scaled into something bigger because there's no point in just keeping it the same way. And talking again about innovation, when you're the new player in the market, you have to be innovative, because how do you differentiate yourself, right? And when you become an established player, there are always newcomers who are trying to play catch up. So you need to be innovative, otherwise you will be relegated to the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 position. How do you maintain your lead? By being innovative.
Absolutely. Coming to that part, which was really a roller coaster ride, I believe that period for TTK Prestige, I think it was 1991 to 2003. The early 10 years of that period, their brand, which was called Mantra, was doing quite well in the US for nearly 10 years before the American operations had to be shut down. Because the Chinese started pumping in their goods at very, very low prices. Walmart came in and virtually destroyed the retail trade out there, right? To compound those problems, in 2001, the domestic government out here, both state as well as central, they levied duties that actually increased tax on pressure cookers. So it was a complete whirlwind of problems that hit the company. Then again, there were wage agreements with the workers, due to which the company could not scale back on the manufacturing. So they were in fact manufacturing, putting in more and more costs to work, but not able to sell because there were no buyers at that point of time. So the climb really started from 2004 to 2005, right? And this again started because Mr. Jagannathan started to work on expanding the range of kitchen appliances. He had a great vision statement around 2010-11, which was a prestige in every kitchen. It sounds very catchy, but as a vision statement for your employees, it's quite incredible. And then, of course, in 2011, you had the world's first microwavable pressure cooker, MicroChef. So you had a lot of ups and downs, but in all of this, your takeaways from Mr. Jagannathan as a leader on how to handle a business during crisis and how to take success as well in your path.
I want to mention two things here. You mentioned all these various crises that happened. A really big crisis that almost brought the company down to its knees was that they had rolled out a new product called smart cookers, which didn't work at all. And they had a fantastic launch strategy, fantastic marketing strategy, and they distributed all over India, and they launched it with such a grand vision. But when the product was launched, it refused to function. And there was chaos. People from around the country were returning it. And that was the one that was the biggest crisis that they faced. And that really brings out the measure, not just of the person heading it, but of the whole company that he built. So what did they do then? They didn't live in denial. They didn't make excuses. Initially, they tried to return them and see if they could fix it, but soon they realized it was catastrophic. And Mr. Jagannatha then listened to his key team. By then, they were able to get really good professionals. He took their feedback, and then they immediately stopped that production overnight. They didn't deny it. They didn't make lame excuses. They just took back everything from the dealers, no questions asked. And within a month, they launched a traditional kind of pressure cooker, and market was happy to take it. And nobody even remembers that this happened because they did it all so smoothly. But did it rock the company from inside? They still shake when they talk about it. They still shake, but they handled it so smoothly. I think that's a marvelous lesson that I learned of grace under pressure. They didn't try to hide anything, and they just sailed through it. Though the same cookers were actually exported later, the same smart ones, they never brought it out in India because they felt that the market wouldn't take it. But that's what I felt. This was the key lesson in leadership, I felt, because how do you remain calm in a crisis? They didn't throw in the towel. They didn't just kind of make excuses. They accepted that their product itself had failed. They made no excuses about it. They took everything back. They compensated the dealers. And then they moved on. They didn't wallow in their failure. They didn't go into they moved on and they scaled up. I think that's a very key learning for everybody.
Right. At the same time, when you hit that success path and you see your business growing over a period of time, how did you find Mr. Jagannathan's behavior at that point of time?
There's one thing that he never gets tired of saying. Usually people say failure is a stepping stone to success. He says success is a stepping stone to failure. He says never rejoice when things are going well, never feel so great saying, oh, finally I made it or I achieved it. You can feel a little happy, but don't become too happy because there's always a crisis around the corner. So be cautious. He always says failure is not yours. If something fails in your company or your product, don't take it personally. Okay, it's not you who has failed. You tried your best. Something did not work out. Don't take it personally. The same thing for success. Don't take it personally. Don't allow it to go to your head. It's going to swell and then you're going to trip over your own feet. So I think this is what I've seen in his behavior, in the behavior of his family, and in the behavior of all the people associated with him, whether they're working with him now, whether they worked with him in the past, or they're associated with him as dealers or board members. I interviewed nearly 30 people for this book, and I cannot get over how ingrained that philosophy is in all of them.
That's a great learning. The other thing is on marketing, as we said, and marketing is extremely critical for any business for that matter. And with TTK Prestige, that tagline that they had, which was "Jo बीवी से करे प्यार, वो Prestige से कैसे करे इनकार." I mean, you could hire that guy right away, right? Depending on who did that. But again, the thought process is, what insights did you take on how relevant is marketing? So what are the things that you should do, and what are the things that you need to avoid in order to have a great marketing strategy?
Okay, so marketing, of course, is very key to any business. You could have the greatest product or the greatest service, but if nobody knows about you, who's going to come to you? So you need to market yourself. And that's something, again, Mr. Krishnamachari, who went on to be the founder of the company, who went on to become a union minister, he was using way back before independence. They had the sunlight and the Lifebuoy logos on calendars, which had the images of gods and goddesses that used to be given all around the countryside, especially in the south, I'm told. So this is there. But Mr. Jagannathan was not very sure whether he needed to go down that route, because everybody needs cookers. Who wants to advertise cookers? But when the GRS incident happened and cookers were exploding and then he fixed it, he felt it was important for the market to know that it has been fixed, and just word of mouth alone will not happen. That's when he hired Sadhika Piaboy, who's also written the Timekeepers of the Nation line for HMT. She's the one who wrote it. And that whole campaign, they created the television ads, the print ads worked very well. And that kind of a image of a conventional family and the conventional pressure cooker, TTK Prestige, they all gelled well together. And I think they've continued it. We had Abhishek Bachchan, Aishwarya Rai, and now we have Vidya Balan, because now they're talking of not just about a couple, they're talking about the whole family, because everybody's in the kitchen now. That's worked out well. Also want to say, any kind of marketing exercise depends on the product or the service that you offer. Whereas this is kind of risk-free, conventional, very, soft kind of advertising. The group also did some very bold advertising. They were the ones who introduced condoms to India. And way back when TTK or TT Jagannathan took over that business, they brought out ads. The first one was Fiesta. I think they had colored condoms, apparently. And they used to release ads with like if it's Friday, it should be red, one color for each day. And then they brought out, after that, they released the Kohinoor condoms, which is a light pink, like the Kohinoor diamond. The diamond is a light pink, so they brought out this. And that was so sensational, even questions were asked in Parliament. So I feel the same way now that they have this core brand of condoms. It's very edgy. It's focused on the youth. And many of the young people in India still live with their parents, and sex is taboo. So the condoms are also packaged and they look like a book, so they can keep it on the bookshelf. So it's very edgy. So it all depends, I feel, on what is the kind of product and service in the market that you're aiming at. About what you should not do, I really don't have a negative example from this company, because they seem to have done everything right. I haven't come across anything negative they have done. So I don't have any example from this company.
But in general, if you had to, from whatever you observed with other companies that you work with, probably, what are some of the mistakes that people end up making when they get into marketing?
When the image of the company does not lend itself to the product that they are making. For example, I don't want to mention the brand because they recanted. They brought out some very sexist ad, which showed that only a woman should be doing this kind of a work or something like that. And it just doesn't gel, because every person now, whether even if he may be he may not share that view, at least in public, it's not politically correct for them to say it. So any right thinking individual would not agree with that. And why that brand allowed that ad to be released, I don't know. So I think if you're selling any kind of a kitchen appliance now, you cannot target it only at a woman. It should be targeted irrespective of gender, which is fine, I think, because it could be a woman. You could use a woman model, but you cannot say it's only to be used by a woman. You know what I mean? It can be used by anybody. I also feel sometimes brands pick political positions and they don't back it up. If you have the courage to go and say, I'm taking this position, see it through. Just because a few people come and protest against you, then you recant it. It makes you look really weak. So think carefully. Do you really have the guts to take that stance? Otherwise, don't. Nobody's asked you to do it. Take a stance. For example, if you're a women-centric thing and you encourage gender equality, you should back festivals like mine, where I do Under the Raintree Women's Cultural Festival. We are not male bashing. We're just saying it's an equal space, and this is all the things that women can do. Here is an opportunity, but we are not going to go around promoting anything which will diss a man. We are not going to do that. We're never going to do that. So I think those are plus and minuses of marketing.
Right. In all of this that we've spoken about, obviously you've spoken to Mr. Jagannathan. You've discussed with him all these intricate details. What are some of the key qualities that you found in him as a leader and also as a human being, as a person?
I have to tell you something. He didn't know me at all, like I told you. I mean, I was just somebody who was introduced by somebody whom he liked. He spoke to me on the phone and said, come and meet me. And right away, that's what it takes him. It takes him 5 minutes to make up his mind. Even the biggest decisions, I'm told, he can gauge that person and he will decide in 5 minutes. And after that, once he begins to trust you, he does not micromanage at all. I mean, he had told me very clearly, I don't know anything about writing this book. You're the expert. You write whatever you want. And I used to keep sending him stuff saying, what do you think about this? He said, what do you want me to say? I mean, if you think it's good, things like that. Since then, I've been in touch with him for a couple of other books. We recently did a coffee table book for an organization, and they wanted a forward. And I suggested Mr. Jagannathan's name, and he said, don't ask me to write. You write. You know everything about me. So I wrote it, and he approved it. He's changed one word. So anything at all. And, he just gives me a free hand. That's me. But I'm talking about people within his organization who have huge responsibilities. And I recently have had occasion to meet him because now Penguin has expressed interest in publishing an updated version of the same book. They want us to add a couple of more chapters because of the stellar performance the company had during the pandemic. And post the pandemic, it's still continuing to grow and grow. So they want us to add a couple of more chapters. So I happened to meet him last week. And then I was very surprised to learn that, whatever else he was ready to hand over. They've had a professional MD for years. They've had key people in many things. Product development was his baby. He would still want to go and be in the lab and he would design everything. And now, I mean, they had tried a few people earlier, but he was never satisfied. And now he's found somebody and he's so happy. He's delegated the whole thing to him. And he says he doesn't even go there anymore because he's very happy with him. And that, I mean, it's like for him to handing over his baby to someone. But he's completely happy with him. And the same thing I realize even with his MD. The MD thinks he's become, Mr. Jagannathan is no longer an executive chairman. From the last couple of years, he's just the chairman of the board. He's not playing an executive role, which means he really, when he feels like he just needs to go to the office and sit. But he does not interfere in the running of the company. He's handed it over to everybody and down the ranks. I've spoken to the HR manager. I've spoken to the IT head. I've spoken to the company secretary. I've spoken to, you name it, all of them. And of course, the MD, all of them talk about the free hand that they have. They turn to him as a sounding board. After all, he's the majority shareholder. He also needs to know some things, I suppose. But he has given them a free hand.
I'm before I step into Q&A, and I'd request all our participants, if there are any questions that you have for Sandhya, please post them in the Q&A section. But before we go there, I'd like to take 5 quotes away from your book, which I found to be extremely useful, especially for me as an investment professional. The first is that business is a lot of common sense. And common sense is indeed the most uncommon of qualities. 2, in business, one should not only look at the big picture, but also have an eye for detail. And I think you did touch upon it, that Mr. Jagannathan, while he was looking at the big picture, but he also had an eye for intricate details in terms of how to solve that problem of pressure cooker burst and so on and so forth. The third is that failure is never an option. You face the challenge and you persevere. Fourth, if you want to know the truth about your product, go to the market, meet your dealers and customers. I mean, that so often is the case, right? Because you are sometimes living in a halo that whatever you're doing is based on some kind of feedback that it may be right. But unless you yourself go and test the waters or go and speak to your customers, you're never going to learn the truth about your product. And the last, as you mentioned, because you titled the book that way, is about disrupt. That with changing times, you need to change the way you do business, and that the old ways won't continue to work. So Sandhya, before I get into any questions, anything else that you experienced while you were writing this book and while you were interacting with Mr. Jagannathan that we haven't spoken about and which may be relevant from the audience's perspective?
I feel that, mostly companies from South India, they're very reticent to talk about themselves and to scale up and things like that. And for me, it was a pleasure to write this, especially because they were so open and honest. Everybody, include Mr. Jagannathan, his family, his colleagues, not only just about their successes, but also their failures, which is the biggest problem most people have. While, when things go well, everything seems so easy, but it's the hard work that happens and the emotional, financial, physical problems that people have to overcome. I think those are the lessons that everybody needs to learn. And it would be nice if more people shared these stories about themselves.
Right. So I'm going to take one question which has come on. Which is the next project like TTK Prestige that you are working on?
Well, not exactly like TTK Prestige, but I have another book that's out in a couple of weeks' time. It's about, again, a very pioneering person. Uh, she is former minister from Karnataka and the first Muslim minister in South India. And it's the journey of a liberal Muslim woman in Indian politics. So that's the next book. But I'm also working on a business related book with Mr. Ashok Suta. That's not yet ready for release. That's in the final stages. That'll be out sometime next year.
You touched upon why you chose to write this book about TTK and some of your success, key takeaways from this success story. But any other learnings from other managements that you would have met, interacted with? Any key learnings from there as well?
See, I feel what goes into the DNA of a company is dictated by the person on top. If they have clearly committed to something, and I'm not saying people can't change, people might be at a particular point in their lives, or they may have grown up with certain characteristics. I think everybody can change if they work at themselves. And if they decide that, okay, now that I've taken up this thing, or I've hit a roadblock and I need to reinvent, they can not only reinvent themselves, but also the company. And everything is dictated by the person in charge. And they are responsible for it being inculcated right down to the person who opens the door.
Sure. Any other important aspects along the lines of innovation that you've come across, right? And why this is such an important aspect for all business leaders or even business entrepreneurs to keep at the back of their minds?
See, like I said, innovation is an ongoing process. There can never be any end to it. As long as you're in business, you have to keep innovating. It could be your product, it could be your processes, it could be your marketing, it could be anything. So innovation, you can't get away from it. It's like even this book. I mean, though it could be just updated as an e-version, but it would be a never-ending thing. So I think it's just a continuous chain, and also that's one of the reasons why manufacturing companies like TTK are forever removing, what do they call it? The planned obsolescence. They remove certain products. So they know they're going to run it for 4 5 years, and then the new products coming. And as the demand starts coming down, you see it with all, with all goods. Yeah. So I think innovation is the key.
Super. I think we've kind of covered most things that we wanted to highlight on. Questions are pretty much along the same lines as well.
Okay.
Any last comments from you, Sandhya?
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying that, I don't know if it is a reiteration of something that should be obvious. What is his motto in life? It could be not a very popular thing to say these days, but there is no shame in hard work. People should be committed to, if they take up a job, they should be committed to working hard and making it a success, which I know it gets a lot of bad press, and a lot has been made in various social media about people now not wanting to work very hard and taking it easy. Why do you think there are weekends? You work hard during the week and you enjoy the weekend. Life can't be a long weekend, right? So I agree with him. Maybe I'm old fashioned that way. I like my work days to be work days and my holidays to be holidays. So I think that's what I took away, from him, because he really likes his work, or he came to like the work that he was doing, and he put his heart and soul into it. And I think that's something that all of us can bear in mind.
Yeah, I think I'll just end with one quote that you have in the book from Mr. Narayan Murthy. He said that the harder you work, the luckier you get. So, eventually you find things working for you, but you need to put in that extra level of effort to ensure that your business grows over a period of time. Thank you so much, Sandhya. It was a pleasure interacting with you. I'm sure all our participants found this session insightful. Thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you very much, Nitin.